Hello, what is up, everybody? So now you have heard that the Beast Snagga box set has been released, and if you didn't get scalped and managed to pick one up, you have a shiny new codex, the 9th edition Ork Codex. Of course, the official codex is not released. This is a pre-release codex, so all the tournaments and events are still running the 8th edition Ork Codex. However, it seems that a lot of people are still out there playing and using the 9th edition codex and finding out some cool stuff with the Ork Codex. Now, a lot of people in the community were debating, and some people were extremely salty about the 9th edition codex because overall there's very significant changes to the codex. It seems like the army has been greatly reworked, and although I still believe that the same playstyles we saw in 8th edition with horde style lists, buggy spams, and stompa lists, some kind of funky other list that people were concocting, they'll still be able to play those lists, but I think the actual list building itself has been drastically changed with the changes to clans, with changes to basically everything, with everything changing so much. It's kind of crazy because a lot of the units that people were hoping that got buffed did get buffed, but with everything else being buffed and with the new Beast Snag lines looking really great, it's going to be really tricky to field a lot of stuff because there's so much good stuff that you can field in the new codex. So, in this video, we're just going to be going over the general changes that the orcs have been changed through, and then we're going to go over the army wide rule changes, and then in the next videos, we'll actually go into more detail on what exactly the nitty gritty of each of the changes are. Brief overview: most units in the codex did get a improvement to their stats, and overall most units did get buffed, whether it was an improvement to their stats or the fact that their point costs went down. If you were following the Warhammer community leaks, you learned that the orcs got +1 toughness on a lot of their units, and choppas are now -1 AP, which is undoubtedly a huge buff, as minus AP is very important now with a lot of units having great armor saves and having abilities to increase armor saves. Looking at you, AdMech, you bastards. And so that -1 AP on choppas makes what would regularly just be boys that are very cumbersome at fighting anything that's high armor save like Terminators, makes them much stronger, which is great. And the +1 toughness is awesome too, because now you're gonna get a lot of more boys surviving against any sort of shots that are weaker than toughness. Weaker than strength 5. So horde lists have more survivability than ever. Interesting change, although looking at all the other nice changes, it's pretty in line with them, is that you can only have one war boss per detachment. Also interesting, as relics and warlord traits, in my opinion, have been buffed, and it seems that actually all of the Ork HQ have been buffed. So most people are theory crafting lists with multiple attachments so that they can run multiple war bosses, especially the new Beast Snagga war bosses, which we'll get into in another video, which have insane stats and abilities. Stratagems don't seem to be that important. A lot of the stratagems seem honestly negligible. There's only a couple of standout stratagems, and most of the good stratagems are clan specific, which I don't think is a bad thing. It kind of seems like Games Workshop doesn't want you to have to rely on stratagems and you can just build lists without them. Maybe this is to appeal to more casual players, or this is just a change they want in the game, but overall the orc stratagems seem a little underwhelming, which is not necessarily a bad thing because most of the units by themselves got a huge buff. Same thing applying to custom jobs. Custom jobs, there's one or two that seem like a must have, but other than that, custom jobs seem to be pretty weak overall. The interesting change is that they no longer cost CP, they cost points, which actually may help with you maximizing on multiple detachments, as detachments cost points. So now you can have multiple detachments and you can have some killer HQ choices, but custom jobs seem pretty stagnant overall. There's really nothing that stands out. There's one or two that stand out, but other than that, the rest of them don't even seem that great. Of course, as well, all of the clans got changed. There's new clan passives, there's new clan stratagems, new clan relics, and warlord traits. And we will actually be getting into the clans in the very next video. So now for the army-wide rule changes. Specialist Ladz. So now characters such as Gazgul, Snickrot, and the other named characters, they can join the detachment without breaking the detachment, which is a lot of fun. I think this will give some more playability to named characters. This actually applies to everyone except the new Beast Snaggas character for some reason. I think it's just because that character is very strong. Overall, I think it's a great change which allows more flexibility in list building. And on some sad news though, Gretchin lose OPSEC and they don't get clan culture. I was actually hoping for Gretchin to be more involved in the Orc army, although they did get +1 toughness. But it's kind of sad to see them lose OPSEC. I don't think they're gonna lose that much playability in competitive just because you're still gonna want them to round out your detachments, and they're the cheapest way to get a troop choice. Specialist mobs is a really great change, I believe. So instead of having specialist detachments, you can actually pick one unit per every detachment you have and give it essentially a special culture. Some of these cultures seem a lot of fun, such as truck boys, which allow any knob, boyz, or war boss to have this trait. And what that allows is that the truck can move, and then you can actually disembark the unit from the truck even after the truck has moved. So that's pretty. I think that's pretty good. It sounds very strong. You're getting a lot of movement out of one of those units, and again, this is gonna further fuel the power of multiple detachments. Dakka weapons. This isn't. This is. I think it's kind of strange. So they replace a lot of assault weapons with Dakka. So Dakka is its own profile. It's sort of like rapid fire. It loses the benefit of being able to advance and then shoot. However, if you're within half range of the weapon, you get a different amount of shots. You get more shots. It's not quite double the amount of shots, but it's a different profile. So for example, big shooters are 5 and 3. So at regular range, it's 3 shots, but within half range of a big shooter, you're getting 5 shots. So Dakka weapons, that's going to be an interesting choice, and there are some abilities that play on the Dakka weapon profile. It'll be interesting to see what people think of with Dakka weapons. Ere We Go got changed. This is undoubtedly a nerf. So instead of having to roll, or instead of getting the choice to roll 1 dice or 2 dice, now you have to roll both the dice. That's a slight nerf to Here We Go, but luckily Here We Go is still a passive that's on most Orc units, and it's still a great passive to have on any unit. Ramshackle got a huge buff, so Ramshackle now, any weapon that's not strength 8, and if it's hitting a vehicle with Ramshackle, it acts as disgustingly resilient. So you're doing -1 damage to that vehicle. That's huge. That makes buggies really, really durable, especially in this meta. I mean, it's not like mind-blowingly game-changing, but it is still a game changer, and it's a pretty significant buff to the survivability of vehicles. Mob rule got changed, so now instead of mob rule being you can use a nearby mob that and count the number of models for leadership. If you have a nearby mob and they have over half their strength, but your unit has under half strength when you're rolling for leadership, it counts as having over half strength, which is okay. I mean, it's I don't I think it's a nerf. It's like a slight nerf to it. Leadership is not that crazy right now, anyways, but there are a lot of units that can do minus leadership, so mob rule. It is a bit of a nerf, but I don't think it's gonna be such a big nerf that it affects the overall power level of the codex. Beast Snaggas, Beast Snaggas are their own keyword, so it's like speed freaks. They're like an army within the Ork Codex. So all Beast Snaggas get a 6+ invuln, and they also get +1 to hit against vehicles and monsters, which I think is crazy. Beast Snaggas, we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of Beast Snaggas. I think that's going to be a big archetype for sure in the competitive scene. And everyone also probably saw this if you were following Warhammer community. Waaagh got changed. So Waaagh used to be a 6-inch aura that all the bosses had, and you could give it to a big mech with a Warlord trait. But now Waaagh is an ability you can activate once per game if your Warlord is a war boss. Or if it's a Death Killer, War Trike, or a Biker boss, they can do a Speed Waaagh. So a Waaagh allows core and characters to advance and charge, just like the old Waaagh. Plus you get +1 attack until the next command phase. And then on the next command phase, you get +1 attack. So you retain that +1 attack essentially for when you use the Waaagh, and then you get it again for one more turn on your next turn. So Waaagh is it's an interesting change. It's cool that it's global, so that it basically works on all your core and characters on the entire field. Overall, I don't think it's a buff or a nerf. I think it's just a change. So it's going to be interesting to see how players take advantage of Waaagh. Speed Waaagh is taking an entirely different direction. So Speed Waaagh allows bikers and vehicles to shoot after advancing with assault weapons with no penalty. Dakka weapons get an extra attack, and all range attacks get an additional armor penetration. So armor penetration 2 goes to 3 until the next command phase, and then you retain that armor penetration for another turn. That is interesting in the fact that it seems like they are pushing vehicles to be more of a ranged build as opposed to when Speed Waaagh, the old Speed Waaagh, we used to give vehicles the ability to advance and charge. So that's an interesting change. I actually like it because it diversifies the builds a little bit. So those are the changes overall. I feel overall, looking at these changes in a vacuum, it's kind of hard to tell if this is a significant buff or nerf to the Ork Codex. I think overall these changes are just changes, and looking at it at a vacuum is not important. You have to really take into account everything else that's happened within the Codex to make sense of it. But I just wanted to summarize all of the changes that are army wide and significant to most of the army before we dive deep into the rest of the stuff. So that's it for this video. Let me know how you feel about the changes. Put a comment down below. How do you feel? Do you like these changes? Do you not like them? What do you think Games Workshop should have done differently? I personally would have loved to have Gretchin have clan culture, but we can't win them all. So thanks for watching. As always, if you appreciate the video, like and subscribe, and keep rolling those dice.